This is about fifth time lucky, but we've just got to get going. Anyway, g'day, my name's Harry, and this is the first video on my new YouTube channel. I'm super excited that you guys are here. If anyone's watching this, we're in for a journey. So let me just get stuck into it. So this channel is basically going to be a source for foreigners looking to learn English, and in particular foreigners looking to come to Australia and learn a bit of Aussie slang, pick up the Aussie accent, learn some phrases, some strange words that we use, how we conjugate some of our verbs, and it's going to be a great source for those people, as well as all English learners. I think I have a pretty neutral accent for an Aussie. There's definitely stronger Aussie accents than mine, but my aim is to keep it at an intermediate advanced. I'm not 100% sure if I try and speak like this, not super quick but not super slow either. I hope that I can appeal to intermediate and advanced English learners. Okay, so why am I doing this? Well, basically it comes off the back of my journey learning Spanish, and let's just ignore the motorbike going down the laneway. And it's all about a theory called comprehensible input that was hypothesized by a guy called Stephen Krashen in the early 80s. And what he reckoned was that we learn languages best like a baby or like a child does, rather than using the traditional methods of grammar, textbooks, learning vocab lists, and that learning through this method of comprehensible input, where we're exposed to a range of vocab, a range of grammar, but all in a much more natural way, like a baby is, immediately just going into listening, starting off with listening, and then down the track going into reading. But as a baby does, we are taught by our parents our native language, right? And so at the beginning, we're talked to very slow, and we're often given visual cues. So that's going to be a part of this. If you're watching a movie, I'm not sure if you've watched anything in English before, but often if you can't pick up exactly what they're saying, often the visual cues help us. And the idea, one of the main ideas with comprehensible input, is worrying less about the conjugations that I'm using and trying to translate in your head, but what am I trying to say? What is the meaning of the communication? And that's the whole idea. And just as a baby does, they first start off by not even saying words, but they learn to communicate without even saying words, but just trying to add meaning, to add hand motions, and as does the parent. Okay, so this is kind of a two-way thing. The idea is that the learner, you guys, are exposed to language that you can understand, and the key here is that it's in a context. We're going to be talking about things in context. Okay, that's one of the main things that the traditional ways of learning a language lack. If you do if you're here, I'm imagining you've done something like Duolingo or something like that in the past. Maybe you've had a sentence like, my cat is going to the supermarket. I mean, just a random example, but a sentence like that you're never going to be saying that. Plus, it's just completely out there by itself, and you're not really learning in what context these nouns or these verbs are used. And that's the whole idea with this. So, comprehensible input could be through a range of ways. As I said, it initially will be through listening. That's what this is going to be, whether that's YouTube, whether that's movies, TV shows, podcasts like this. And then down the track, we'll get into reading texts. And one of the things that they say is that we don't want to go too early on the reading, and that is because when we read too fast, we tend to actually read out loud a little bit, and it can really mess up our pronunciation early on. And I know some people that I've talked to in the language learning community, they're kind of like, oh, I don't care about my pronunciation, I just want to be able to speak. Believe me, you're going to care about your pronunciation when you are sure that you're saying something correctly and the native person cannot understand you. It's an embarrassing feeling because you think you're saying it right, but you're pronouncing it terribly, and therefore they can't understand you. Okay, let's get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty, the details of comprehensible input. Okay, so the idea is that you are listening to content that is slightly challenging. This is very important. What's going to happen is if you're only picking up every second or every fifth word, you're going to have no idea how to piece together the puzzle of the words that you don't understand. So there's this idea that you listened to, you can understand between 95 to 98% of what you're listening to. That way, you can put together what you don't know through the context and hearing it multiple times in multiple different contexts. And that's the idea, is that subconsciously the brain is going to be picking up these grammar rules. For example, in Spanish, the language that I learnt, the subjunctive. Now this is something that really doesn't translate well from English to Spanish, and that was quite hard for me to piece together when I needed to use the subjunctive. And I'm sure there's things like that in English, but what I realized is that when I heard it over and over and over in multiple different contexts, firstly, I started to understand when people used it with me, and secondly, I started to get an intuition for when I needed to be using it. And this whole idea is that through this immersion and this repetition, we start to develop a native brain or a second brain, rather than having this what some people call this monitor, which is translating from my native language into English. Instead, what we want to be able to achieve is to get an intuition of what sounds right. Okay, so as I said before, focusing too much on grammar can also create this monitor in your brain. You're thinking exactly how to conjugate the verb rather than trying to convey meaning, if that makes sense. And this causes students to overanalyze and hesitate during conversation or natural communication, because the reality is that if you're having a conversation with someone, there is a time pressure. And sure, maybe you're someone that can, given a minute, can work out how to translate a sentence from your native language to English, but in a conversation, this just simply isn't gonna cut it. You need to be able to have a intuition of what sounds right and not have this monitor. There's a couple of other quick things that I just wanted to mention in terms of this comprehensible input, and I'm thinking that I'm going to do a more detailed dive on if anyone has any questions or just frequently asked questions that I've had about this. And the one thing that I wanted to mention is that the content that you're listening to is extremely important. This is like anything in life, really. If you're interested in it, you're going to pay more attention, and in turn, you're probably going to get more out of it. So just because something is at your level, if you're not interested in it, you're probably going to vague out, you're not going to be paying as much attention, and that's really going to affect your learning. So look, if I'm not the most interesting person to you, then go find someone else. I'm sure there's plenty of English resources, but that is a key thing, and it really encourages enjoyment. We also know that in language learning, your mental state can have a huge impact on it. Just from my experience being in a foreign country, I found that often people that were a bit more extroverted and happy to make mistakes, they were the ones that put themselves out in those situations, exposed themselves to more situations, and yeah, maybe they made mistakes at the beginning, but they were definitely the ones that learnt quickly. I just want to discuss a little bit about the role of output. So at the start, we're going to be all about comprehensible input, okay? And I learnt this method through a website called Dreaming Spanish. For anyone that's looking to learn Spanish, this is a great website. There's a guy on there who's kind of taken Stephen Krashen's work and applied it to Spanish, and has got a whole bunch of videos starting from A1 super beginner, where you're literally drawing pictures of a dog and saying dog, and you can start with no vocab, no grammar. You just start from base 1, and there's videos all the way up to native content, and that's what we're trying to get to, right? This is intermediate, advanced, native. Hopefully it can help a few people. But what this guy says is that the role of output needs to come after a specified number of hours. I can't remember if it's 500 or 600 hours or something like that. That's when we can start having other methods of input, namely reading, because as I said before, we don't want our pronunciation to suck. And then after another specified number of hours, we're going to be focusing more on output. So one tool that is highly recommended, and I could recommend this from past experience, is something called crosstalk. And I'm going to do a whole video on this, and I might do a demonstration of how this works. But crosstalk is basically, I speak to someone in their native, I speak in my native language, they speak in their native language, and through that method, I can just focus on listening. I don't have to waste energy on trying to think of a response. I just have to think. I just have to listen in Spanish, for example, and then I can respond in English. So there's no thought process for me to speak in English, because that's my native language. So where did I get this whole idea from? Basically, it comes off the back of my experience in Argentina. So as a short backstory for me, I studied Spanish at university level. To be honest, I don't really know why I started. I was doing a little bit of Duolingo, but I wanted to, so I thought, why not? I'll just go and have a crack at Spanish 1 at university. And let me tell you, it was a very traditional style, grammar, textbooks. We followed a set, I guess the grammar path, and learnt a bit about the past, and learnt the future, then learnt the subjunctive, and never really got any of it, to be honest. I did it up to Spanish 5, so that's 5 semesters long, but I basically did it because it was a blood subject. It was quite easy to get good grades, and it boosts my average mark, so that was my reasoning. Now, if that's your reasoning for doing Spanish, sure, but from my experience, that didn't really help my Spanish. You need some sort of motivation, whether it's going over to that country. If you're coming over here and you need to be able to speak English for a job, for university, you've got friends that speak English and you want to be able to communicate with them, those are great reasons. Or you simply just want to watch more English content because, hey, I think we have some good content. Those are great motivations. Whatever yours is, that's perfect. Anyway, for me, after all this, I took a year and a half off Spanish, and then I decided I wanted to go on exchange and really crack in and have a go at my Spanish. And so I basically had to put in 3 options to my university, and I put in one in Colombia, one in Chile, and then one in Argentina. And basically I got the one in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and the rest is history. I went on exchange there. Going in, I was actually supposed to have a B2 level of Spanish, which is like upper intermediate, and let me tell you, I did not. Maybe I was A2, but I'd kind of forged my test to get in a little bit, and they said even if you don't have that, you just have to do a course and it will be all right. And look, it turned out all right. I managed to study in Spanish, and I'm super grateful for the experience. It was such an awesome time, but yeah, not knowing the language to a B2 level before going in definitely hindered my process. And one thing that I also think is that had I had a bit better level going in, it's almost like I could have built on top of that, and I would have been able to expose myself to more conversations, and I would have kind of grown exponentially from there. But at the start, the social side of things was pretty hard with the locals. So yeah, that I guess held me back a little bit. So when I was over there, the first month, I did a language course, and again, this was very traditional style, but it was kind of completely unstructured. The teacher would kind of talk for like 3 hours, and we would do a little bit of exercises and that sort of thing. I think maybe the speaking in hindsight did help my ear, help my listening, but I really don't think it helped me that much. I just wasn't paying that much attention. The first month I was sort of going out a bit, and my focus wasn't really on the Spanish as much as it should have been. And I've quickly learnt that the Argentine Spanish that I was learning over there, that was all around me over there, was way different to the Spanish from Spain, which is what I'd learnt at university. So this is a great example for you guys. If you've only ever learnt American English and then you come to Australia, I'm not 100% sure if the difference is as stark as the Spanish from Spain to the Spanish in Argentina, because I can understand an American, they can understand me for the most part, but there's definitely phrases and the way that we pronounce things that are quite different, especially the British English even compared to Australian English. So the thing that I found while I was over there is I just had difficulty understanding, right? I could speak okay, but if I couldn't understand, then I couldn't respond, and that's what led to an innumerable number of circumstances where I was just left feeling embarrassed and awkward and all those sort of emotions. And a couple of months in, I guess I felt like I hit a bit of a plateau, and I was like, where to from here? Days kind of went past, and I felt like I should have been improving more, but it was just becoming quite strenuous, and it took a lot of my energy, I think. And so I went down a bit of a rabbit hole, down the YouTube rabbit hole of what was the best way to learn a language, and maybe that's why you're here. Maybe that's how you've stumbled across my channel. And what I basically found is this method of comprehensible input is the way, right? And I basically locked in with that. I started listening to more content while I was over there, and since I've been back in Australia, I've been back here for about a month, and since I've been back, I've been trying to, it gave me hope actually for when I came back here that I would still be able to progress, and I think that's true. I've been able to listen to content and improve my listening, which is something that was probably my worst attribute. I've been able to still work on that while I'm not in the country and not fully immersed in it. And obviously throughout the journey, there's the progress. There was ups and downs, and it's a bit of an emotional roller coaster. You have one conversation where you're like, wow, I can speak Spanish, and then you speak with someone on the street and you're like, what the hell did they just say? But overall, I love that experience, and that's one of the reasons that I want to do this channel. Basically, it's an opportunity for me to talk a bit about my experience, but in English, and try and help some people coming over, because my experience as a student, by the way, I'm studying a Masters of Mechatronic Engineering, which is like robotics, and at my uni, I'm actually surrounded by a lot of international students, a lot of students from Asia, in China in particular, who have varying levels of English, but I've definitely been in groups with Chinese students who really, maybe they've just arrived and they struggle. So I think this would be a great source for them to listen to before coming, and just get their ear a bit more accustomed to the Aussie accent, because I've definitely been in situations where I can tell they're struggling. Okay, so wrapping it up, a few ideas I have for the channel is, I guess, to talk a bit about my experience with Spanish, but I want to do episodes specifically about Australia as well. Obviously, people want to know the slang, a bit of what we say to each other in every day, and I'm sure you're going to pick that up just by listening to me. I'll probably say things incidentally, and please let me know in the comments if you think I'm speaking too fast. I realise this is my first time doing this, so after a bit of time I probably accidentally just start speaking fast again. But you know, it is what it is. You know, everyone wants to know about the animals. I can't tell you how many people asked me while I was away about the animals in Australia. Are there kangaroos in the city? Are there koalas in my tree? Short answer, no, but we'll talk a little bit about the animals. How dangerous are the spiders? We have to talk about the sport. Best city in the world for sport, Melbourne, where I live. It's going to talk about Australian football, for those that don't know. The culture of Melbourne, of Australia, the food here. We've got great cafe culture, great coffee culture, and a bit about the humour. We'll try and throw in some jokes that we're known to be quite sarcastic, so maybe that will come through a bit like the British humour. We have a little bit of that, probably more so like the Brits than the Americans, but you'll see. And then we'll maybe talk a bit about travel, history, the history of Australia, our Indigenous history, cultural differences between maybe some of your countries and Australia, and the experiences that I've had with that. And then maybe I might have some chilled conversation with some of my friends, just to give you something else, and so that you can listen to two people speaking and get a different accent and different way of speaking. Alright, sorry, the video just cut off there because as I ended the previous recording, I realised the last couple of minutes have been cut off because my iCloud storage ran out. So there you go, you live and you learn. Now it's a bit late in the night, and I might be looking a bit dishevelled, but I wanted to just finish this off. So here we go. So as I was kind of saying, this podcast or this YouTube channel really serves as a purpose for me to talk about a few things. I was mentioning those things. Now, a couple of other things just quickly, maybe a bit about travel to Argentina and South America in general, some of the do's, the don'ts, the things you have to go see, the crazy places that people just don't think about or don't know of, some of the cultural differences, the food, the sport, all that sort of things. Additionally, I want to keep a bit of accountability for myself with my Spanish journey, my comprehensible input journey. So I'm going to do semi-regular updates on that on the channel, and we'll see how I'm going with my comprehensible input journey with Spanish. But overall, this is pretty open-ended where it goes. It's really going to be things that interest me. If people have ideas, I really would love to get in touch with the community, and I'm super open to any tips or advice or recommendations for things for me to talk about, because I want to get in touch with people from the Comprehensible Input community, the language learning community, and it really also just serves as an opportunity for me to express myself, I guess, learn how to speak in front of a camera and practice, I guess, a bit of public speaking, if you can call it that, as well as just have a crack at something new, because why not? I guess I've always kind of had a thought of doing something like this. I did a couple of Twitch streams playing Fortnite a couple of years ago, and that really fizzled out quite quickly. But I thought, why not? We'll just have a crack at this. It's not really too serious, and I'm not going to put a heap of effort into editing the videos to make it super fancy and have title screens. I really just want to get content out there for you guys to listen to, and for me to have a go. So there you go. I'll leave it there. I don't want it to go for too long, but as I said, if anyone has any ideas, drop it in the comments. I'll get back to everyone. I can't imagine there's going to be an abundance of comments that I'm not going to be able to get to. So like the video. Additionally, I just remembered I'm gonna put 3 links in the description. One of those is a set of articles by a guy called Language Demon, who writes a comprehensive set of articles on comprehensible input and the hypothesis and all the different sort of sub theories within it, which I think is pretty cool. If you're going to devote a lot of time into something, it's good to know a bit about it. For example, if someone asks you how you're learning Spanish or how you're learning English, it's a bit late, and they might just think of Duolingo, but you can tell them exactly what comprehensible input is, how it works, and I believe that's really how the message is getting spread with comprehensible input. I mean, I think I found it out on YouTube or Reddit. I definitely went down a Reddit rabbit hole. Additionally, I'm going to put the Dreaming Spanish link in the description for anyone that's interested in Spanish. They've got a whole variety of levels from super beginner, as I said, and also I'm going to put the link to Stephen Krashen's one of his original videos on comprehensible input that was in the early 80s, which is worth a watch if you can be bothered. Alright, I'm going to wrap it up there. I know I probably just waffled a bit, so thanks so much for watching. Cheers.